Hello, today I'm going to show you how I would go shopping for a computer. Now, there's not a right way to buy a computer or a right computer to buy. All you can do is just try to buy the best computer for you. And when I say that, I generally am going about it trying to spend the least amount of money possible. Now, I don't look at it as like a challenge, trying to get the absolute rock bottom price, but I'm definitely not trying to spend more than makes sense. And so I think when a lot of people go shopping for a computer, they don't really have a plan. And when you do something like that, the end result often is you spending more money than you needed to spend, or I think the worst case scenario would be you buying the thing that doesn't fit your needs. So this video can be used by anybody who's going shopping for a computer and just doesn't really know where to start. This is a video that I make for my students to complete an assignment about going computer shopping, but I guess this could be of value to anybody. Not the highest production value in the world, as you'll see. I'm going to take you through a little presentation, breaking it down. So, if you're going to go shopping for a computer, the first thing that you should do is ask yourself, what am I going to do with this computer? Now, everyone's going to have different answers to these things, and you should write them down. I mean, sit there, spend a little time thinking about what you're going to do with it. I think that most people probably fit into a bucket that's like this. So let's say I'm going to browse the internet. I think everyone's probably going to browse the internet. Maybe I'm going to stream movies and shows. I don't know. Maybe that means something like Netflix, or heck, even just watching stuff on YouTube. Um, Gonna send some emails. I'm gonna write some essays. I'm gonna track my finances, whatever the heck that means. I'm gonna listen to music. I'm not sure what that means. Maybe upload and store pictures from my phone or camera. That's a pretty simple user. I would call that a basic user. I would also say that most people, for sure, like a huge majority of them, probably look something like that. And some other people are going to have other activities, right? Some people might say something like, I'm a computer programmer, I need some software for that. Or a more realistic one, maybe I'm going to be editing videos, making music. Maybe I'm a big gamer. As you can see, this person's not a gamer. I think if you're not a gamer, there's a good chance that this looks a little bit like you. So knowing that this is a lot of people, let's kind of go a little further down the path. And so your list is going to be different than this. You should add things or subtract things as you see fit. So this is a pretty typical user, and I'm not honestly, I've got this list of bullet points. I'm not sure even what they mean. I guess that's my job to figure out. That brings me to the next thing, and that is what software do I need? And so looking at those tasks, I just decided that I needed Office was the only thing that I needed. And I don't even need that. So let's go back here, and this is where I'm actually going to spend probably most of my time. So browse the internet. What does that mean in terms of software? Well, that just means I'm going to need a web browser. Now, you probably have your favorite web browser. You're probably using it right now to watch this video on YouTube. So I use a lot of Firefox. Sometimes I use Chrome. There's Edge, Safari. So that means so what am I going to do? I need to connect that to what software do I need? And so you're going to need a web browser. That's the answer to that question. Now, every computer that you go buy is going to have a web browser on it. So that really probably shouldn't be part of your browsing criteria. Unless, I guess, you're just married to a particular browser that, but I don't know about that. Streaming movies and shows. Well, you probably don't need any software to stream movies and shows. You probably need a web browser. So, even though, like, I'm telling you, these are kind of the same thing, whether you think of it or not, I think it's useful to just list all the activities you're going to do on your computer, and then kind of we'll connect it up later. Send emails, right? So that's actually an interesting one. So I think most people probably check and send email using a web application like Gmail or Office 365, right? If you have a school email account, you probably just go to a web page. So if you check your email by going to a web page, that means you're using a web app. And so again, all that is just a web browser. But maybe you need something like Outlook, which is an actual program, or I use Thunderbird, which is an actual program. So if you needed an actual program, then we would want to put that here on your list. But if you don't use an actual piece of software, you're just using a web app, well, then that doesn't really matter. Let's say I want to write essays for school. Well, this is definitely an interesting one. So there are web apps like Google Docs, for example. Like, you don't need software to write essays, but sometimes you might need to write your essays using something like Microsoft Word. There's all kinds of free software suites out there if you don't want to spend money. Here, just to make this interesting, I chose Office 2016, but I want you to understand that Office 2016 isn't free for most people. It is for some students if your school is part of an eligible program. But if you don't want to spend money on Office, you don't have to. There's always free alternatives, and there's web alternatives. I'm making this more difficult and saying, hey, I need Microsoft Word. To track finances, I have no clue what that means. I guess you could track your finances in a word processing document. You certainly could. I wouldn't exactly recommend it. Let's say you need a spreadsheet for that. And so at the point where you need a spreadsheet, you need to make a decision about what software am I going to use for spreadsheets. Me, I'm saying I'm going to use Excel. I guess I'll just start doing this. I'll use Excel, which is part of Office. And here I'll use Word, which is part of Office. And for email, I could use Outlook, which is part of Office. Listen to music, that just means you're going to need a media player. I am yet to see a computer that you buy from a store that doesn't have a media player, so this isn't probably really worth listing here, but you could if you were particularly tied to one. And I want to store, look at, upload pictures from my phone or camera. I have yet to see a personal computer that didn't come with image viewing software. And the storage, that's not a software issue. And uploading pictures to like a Facebook account, that's more just web browser. I want to I know I'm taking my time here, but that's kind of the way this is going to go. All of this stuff could have been done, every bit of it could have been done through web apps, through an internet, through a web browser. So this user doesn't technically need to have any software other than what's going to come on the computer. Just to make this more interesting, I said that this person's going to use Office 2016 for their Word and Excel and email needs. It's kind of nice to have it all bundled into one suite, so that makes it kind of easy. One more time, I'll say it. This user certainly could have gotten away with absolutely no additional software. On the other hand, a route I'm not really going to go, maybe your what am I going to use this computer for question is like, I want to run the newest games, right, at the highest settings. Well, that user is going to need, that would kind of go under the software, and that would be a different can of worms. Or maybe you are editing a lot of videos, or maybe you make music on your computer. Well, then you would need some pretty specific software for that. But this user doesn't need specific software, and this is most people, so please understand that. Alright, so I went and I made a choice, and I chose Office 2016. There were other choices out there. There's free ones, there's web apps. I just did this one because it's probably the most common one that people are going to want. Alright, so at this point I've made some decisions about software. Now, software runs within an operating system, and so I needed to choose an operating system. If I was going to run Office, I needed to either choose Mac or Windows as my operating system. I chose Windows. If you want to choose Mac, go ahead and choose Mac, but I chose Windows. So, right, I started with what am I going to do? What software do I need? Only when you know what software do you need can you choose an operating system. Like, for example, if there was a game you wanted to play, you probably would need Windows. This user isn't tied to Windows, but I just made that decision because I'm not trying to spend more money than I need to spend for no reason. All right, so now the next part of this is I've chose one piece of software. So let's look at the system requirements of that software. I just did a Google search to find this. So it's theoretically what you're going to end up with is a list of software. And for most people, it's going to be minimal, right? Maybe it's this, maybe it's even less. And if you want to find the system requirements of a piece of software, what you do is I just went to Google and I typed in Office 2016 system requirements. I could have clicked on some links, but I just saw this right here. I literally just copied and pasted that. So this is telling you what your computer needs to have inside of it to be able to run that software. So I head back here. I'm looking at this list. So I mean, it's going to need to be 1 gigahertz processor or better. I'm going to need a minimum of 2 gigabytes of RAM, 3 gigabytes of disk space, something about screen resolution, and something about the, oops, I didn't mean to do that, something about a modern operating system. So Windows 7 or better. So, just recapping, because it's all about the process here, which is not how people typically go about it. So, what am I going to do? And I need to think about this. What does that actually mean? Do I need some software? If I do, okay, let's pick some software. Then pick an operating system, and then let's decide. Let's figure out what that software needs to be able to run. Literally, the worst case scenario you could find yourself in is where you you realize that there's some software you need, and your computer can't meet those requirements. So now that I've figured out my software, I've figured out my system requirements, now it's time to go find a computer. So really what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go set out to try and find a cheap computer, or affordable, or whatever you want to call it, that can do, that has that stuff in it. So this is going to be, this isn't going to go as well as I wish it did. It's just always kind of hard to look for computers. I'm going to Newegg. I don't know where you want to go shopping. Go shopping wherever you want. But Newegg's a pretty good place to go shopping for computer components, so I'm going to go shopping for a computer. So let's say I'm going computer systems. Now you notice we haven't talked about like desktop, all-in-one, or anything like that. You're the person shopping for a computer. You need to know what you're looking for. I'm going to say I'm looking for a laptop. All right. If you want to go the desktop route, well, you could figure out how that would go. So, as much as Newegg is a really good place to buy technology, it's not an easy place to browse. So, I'm going to go with, they got these subcategories down here. I'm going to go laptops. I wish I could get that pop-up to stop coming up. No thanks. So remember, so I've got a list of things I'm shooting for here. So I need Windows 7 or better. I need 2 gigabytes of RAM. I need 1 gigahertz processor. If my computer has that, then it'll run Office, and it most certainly is going to run a web browser and a media player, so that's all I need in a computer. And if I buy anything more than that, I really should start asking myself if that's money well spent or not. As you'll see, I'm going to overshoot those system requirements a bit because it just doesn't cost me very much to do so. But at the point where you're getting a 4 gigahertz processor and 32 gigabytes of RAM, if you can't answer the question, why did you buy that, you probably shouldn't have bought it. All right, so that's what I'm shooting for. So back to my search. I'm just going to start checking boxes here. So memory is RAM. Let's say, so 2 gigabytes is what I needed. I'm telling you, because I know from experience, that it doesn't cost a whole lot more to go to 4 gigabytes of RAM. Look, you'd be just fine grabbing computers that had 2, but I'm telling you, you're going to spend like maybe $20 more to get 4. Because I've done a little bit of research already, so I apply that filter. And let's say I'm going new. I don't know anything. I don't have any advice about refurbished or not. It's just easier to compare apples to apples. So I've got my memory addressed. I think I've got it addressed. Okay. I've got my condition. I don't care about manufacturers. Let's say price. I know I can get this done in the $200 to $300 range. So I'm going to apply that filter. And fine, let's just start kind of looking at our results. So you see what I'm looking at right here. I don't know if this is surprising to you, but I could meet those system requirements, and I'm actually exceeding them with this $200 computer. So I'm going to click on this, and let's see what the details look like. So my processor, I needed 1 gigahertz. That's 1.6. That's way more than what I needed. 4 gigabytes of memory. That's twice the RAM that I needed. And there's my display, right? Easily meets my needs. This right here would work for me. And I guess, that's like 200 and, I don't know, $203 or something shipped. And there's no reason to think that that's not going to meet my needs. This computer will browse the internet, stream movies and shows. I can do all my Office kind of stuff on it. I certainly can listen to music, and I can upload computers. Right? So why shouldn't I buy that computer? I don't know. This seems like it would work to me. So there's always this kind of like, I think of this as the stuff that would be on the label if you were in a brick and mortar store. Maybe it's sufficient, maybe it's not. What I like to do is scroll down. It doesn't matter where you're shopping. Down in the specifications, you get to learn a little bit more about it. Stuff like battery life. None of this is meaningful to me. I guess there's your screen size. Maybe that's something. Maybe you want a bigger screen. Maybe you don't like the graphics card. What I'm looking for is the hard drive. I want to know what the storage looks like on this thing. And it's kind of weird that I don't actually see it. And for me, yeah, I'm not too thrilled about that. Because one of the ways you kind of get shorted on a computer is on the hard drive. Oh, there it is. That's kind of weird that they only listed up here. So that thing has a 64 gigabyte flash hard drive or solid state hard drive. So that's going to be quick. That's pretty good. I think for this user that'd be fine. My only concern in looking at this user here is this business about like music and pictures, because this person might have like a whole bunch of MP3s stored on their computer, and they might have a million pictures, and at some point, storage might become a bit of an issue for them. Although I think 64 gigs would probably be fine. But let's go and let's do a little bit better here, huh? So let's say hard drive. So solid state hard drive, those are going to give you a good performance boost. It looks like I can get some solid state hard drive above 100 gigs in this price range. So let's see what that looks like. I've only got two options. I can kind of see what I've got here. These both have 128 gigabyte solid state hard drives. So if you were a little concerned about ability to store some music and photos, these might be a better idea. I'm talking about $250. And just to be kind of close the loop on this whole shopping trip, I'm going to get rid of that. I don't know if I have to check that box or not. I'm not the most versed shopper. I want to look at, so there's solid state hard drives, and then there's magnetic spinning drives. If space was something that if you really wanted to be able to store some stuff on your computer, you see I can get something between 500 gigabytes and a terabyte, which is 1,000 gigabytes. But this is going to be a little bit slower. A solid state hard drive is going to give you some pretty decent performance boosts, especially it's going to start up quickly. But if what you want is space to store some files, this right here, just randomly clicking on the first thing I see, this has a terabyte hard drive, which is 1,000 gigabytes roughly. And this has a bigger display than some of those other ones we were looking at. If I'm looking at a cheap computer, this looks pretty good to me. And you notice that processor is nothing to sneeze at too. That's 2.4 gigahertz. So that's in terms of comparing this to that first computer we looked at for $200, this one's got quite a bit more impressive hardware. And the question you got to ask yourself is, do I want to pay $60 for a terabyte hard drive and a faster processor? No is a perfectly reasonable answer to that question, or maybe not. So I'm not trying to tell you that's the one you should get. I don't care what one you choose. The moral of this story is, I bet you there was probably 1,000 computers that would have met my needs for less than $400. And where things get really interesting, in my opinion, is when you go and start looking at computers that cost like oftentimes $600 or $800, and you compare the hardware in a expensive computer with a cheap computer, and oftentimes I can't even tell what you are paying for. And if you don't know why you're spending that extra money, you probably don't want to spend that extra money. That was probably pretty annoying, but that was my email giving me a notification. So that's my quick spiel. I guess it wasn't that quick, but it was kind of quick for how I think you should go shopping for a computer. Now, the difference is this step right here. Other people might have some elaborate needs, right? Like maybe I'm going to make movies, or, I'm trying to get my music career started. Well, then you might have some different answers here, some different software here. That might dictate a different operating system here. The system requirements could vary a lot. Like, this is the thing that tells you what computer you need. Just the problem is you can't jump straight to this step without going through these steps. This is kind of a weird one. I like to point at it because I see people choose the wrong operating system sometimes. Like if you're a gamer and you got a Mac, not to say that can't work out, but you probably didn't make the best choice there. Unless, hey, maybe there's some pretty cool games for Mac, but I know most of them are for Windows. All right, so that is the process that I would go through if I was going to buy a computer. So hopefully that helps you next time you need to go through the process. Thanks for watching.